if you struggle with the kind of posture where your heart is a little bit collapsed, your belly sticks out, and your lower back feels slightly crunchy, then you're not alone. In today's practice, we're going to look at this type of posture as a pattern that's connected within the body, and we'll try to create some space throughout the heart area and through the lower back to repattern the pressure system within the belly. And let's get started standing. And we're just going to take a look at how it feels to stand. You can have your feet hip width distance apart and notice just where the breath moves into the body. You can have your legs fully straight or have them slightly soft. Maybe one hand onto belly, one hand onto heart. And just notice where the breath naturally moves into. It might be a good balance between heart and belly. But for a lot of us that, I'm exaggerating, stand a little bit like this. There tends to be more breath moving into the belly, and then it becomes a little bit harder to breathe into the heart, which might also affect your mood. And you might start to feel some tightness to the lower back. So just without correcting it, without trying to pull your belly in, without squeezing the shoulders together to come into a better posture, just taking a moment to feel where you are. We're going to recheck later. Difference ratio between belly and heart, front of the body and back of the body, presence through the sides of the body, whether the head is relaxed. And then we'll check back in later. I'm traveling, so the props that I have are a little stool that I found. You can use blocks, or you can also use a chair. We want to come into a halfway lift position where the spine is straight, so it can also be a table for you, it depends. And also have a towel, and this is where we're going to start with. I've rolled up the towel to make a nice thick burrito. If you need to stop the video, go ahead, do so, and then come back once you have the prop. And we're gonna lay it underneath the heart. So really underneath tips of the shoulder blades, which will start to correct kind of the collapsed chest. So I'm lying onto it so that my whole shoulder girdle is actually above the towel. And for today, let's bring the arms overhead. It's gonna feel nice. And you know where the position is, right? If you're too high up, then you're gonna have like a kink in the neck. And if it's too far down, you're gonna just feel a scooping of the lower back and not so much of the heart. And we're gonna keep the knees bent for now, because that will help us give a little bit more space through the lower back. Good. And then just allowing some spaciousness to move into the heart. The way that our spines are built, the thoracic spine, or the area that you might feel is kind of rounded, which leads to kind of a collapse feeling through the heart, is the part of the spine that's the hardest to control in terms of extension. So that means if we arch our back, it's going to mostly come from the lower back, and it's hard to lift the upper back, mid to upper back. So just giving the body a bit of an imprint, what it feels to have a bit more space here. Good. And then let's start by breathing here. So you can have the hands onto the belly for a moment. And I'm just going to gently move into a 3-part breath. So at first you can just let the breath move into the belly. Belly expands and softens. Maybe a few more times. Really allowing the softness of the belly to take over, and when you exhale, belly button just gently moves back down towards the spine, no need to force. Good. And then we're going to allow the breath to move also towards the ribs, side ribs. You can have your hands onto the sides of your ribs. And as you inhale, you can really think about expanding the ribs sideways. And as you exhale, there's a bit of a coming together of the ribs. And with the tactile feedback, it might be a little bit easier to move the breath into different parts of the body. And if you feel like maybe the neck is trying a little bit too hard, shoulders are trying a little bit too hard, that's fine. Over time, you want to relax those things. And the reason the breath moves more into the ribs is because there's a little bit more support from the lower belly. So as opposed to allowing the belly to move a lot, keeping the belly slightly toned, and that will start to shift the breath a little bit higher. And also think about breathing into the backs of the ribs. Nice. And if you're comfortable with that, we're going to allow the breath to come all the way. You can even have the, sorry, I might have touched the mic at this point. To the space underneath the collarbones. I'm going to place my hands here and out. And with the towel underneath your heart, you might feel like there's a general expansion of the diaphragm, which might make the breath a little bit more jagged at first. If you're not used to really expanding the rib cage, creating space between the ribs and sending the breath all the way up, there's a coordination that's just missing. Anytime the body does something new, whether you're throwing a ball or you're trying to do a cartwheel or a new yoga pose, breathing in a different pattern is also a coordination problem. So if it feels a little bit off, the body's jittery, no problem, just coming back to it from time to time. And seeing you can make things nice and smooth. And without getting stressed, you can focus a little bit on the inhale. So nice and smooth breath in. All the way to the space underneath the collarbones, and with the exhale, breath gently descends. Good. Nice. And then you can take the towel off. You can roll off to one side. We don't use the towel for now, so you can put it aside. And just notice that you now don't have a towel underneath you. If it's easier or harder to breathe, there's a bit more space. And then we're going to take care of our lower back a little bit more, first finding space. So let's rock the pelvis a little bit back and forth. So it's like a tiny cat and cow. You can inhale to arch a little bit. And as you exhale, pulling the belly button in towards the spine. A few of these. Doesn't have to be really big. And if you like, as you exhale, inhale, so arching the back a little bit. As you exhale, pulling the belly button in towards the spine. You can press into the feet a little bit and really think about opening through the fronts of the hips as you lift the hips. So let's do this a few times. When you come back down, nice and controlled movement. Belly button pulls in towards the pubic bone pulls in towards the belly button, and then pressing into the feet. And sometimes when we lift the hips, we're in an arch position as we lift the hips. So we want to, for today, be really aware of this tilt of the pelvis, posterior pelvic tilt, as you lift the hips up. Again, inhale neutral or tiny little arch, almost like a cow belly, and as you exhale, as you move into the cat, really almost like you're hollowing out or hammocking the belly as you lift up. Good. And only to the point where you feel like you can keep this feeling of the pubic bones moving towards the rib cage. So as soon as you feel you're going to arch your back, just come back and you can play around with the pressure of the heels. Good. Might be a little bit unusual. Nice. And then last one, exhale. you can lower the hips down. And then let's tuck the knees in towards the chest. You might have felt your glutes getting a little bit more active in that one. Slightly different feeling. And then we're going to take a super easy twist, but we're going to really focus on hugging the knees in, almost rounding the spine. You can see my sits bones and my tailbone coming off the ground. And then I'm bringing the knees towards the right side. And then left shoulder onto the ground. So sometimes when we do a supine twist, I know my legs are not maybe fully in the camera. The knees are kind of on the height of the hips. Today I really want the knees in, almost like you're in child's pose, but you're still twisting. The left shoulder is a little bit off the ground. You can always have something under the knees or in between the knees to soften the twist. Good. And I'm taking a few deep breaths into the side ribs, into the lower back. So I'm creating the stage for the lower back to be a little bit more spacious. A few breaths here. And again, if you like, you can really focus on the inhale. On one hand, we create space through the lower back. And on the other hand, the inhale really moves up the spine and creates a sense of lift, even when you're lying down through the heart. You can stay here longer if you like. For today, I'm going to slowly switch sides. I'm going to hop my hips a little bit over towards the right side so I have room. Again, I'm hugging the knees in. I'm lifting the tailbone off the ground. And then I'm moving the knees towards the left. And I'm cactusing my arms here. Of course, if the knees come in closer, there's more happening through the spine. So there's a rounding as well as a twist. If that's too strong, of course, you can bring the knees a little bit further away from you. Or again, place a blanket or block something in between the thighs or underneath the thighs. Right shoulder, nice and soft. Okay. And again, dedicating a few breaths on the side, this time into the right lower back, and also allowing the chest to expand. Maybe a couple more. If you want to take the head into the twist, go ahead. Today I'm going to keep the head neutral. Nice. Again, if you do this on your own, go ahead and stay a little longer in these individual postures. Otherwise, slowly coming to center, I'm going to take the towel away. And now that we have some space in the lower back, we have some space through the fronts of the hips and the heart, we're going to activate the core. I'm going to fold the mat in a little bit so my heels can slide on the floor. I think they can slide quite well. So before that, we're going to do a dead bug. But with one hand underneath the lower back. So we did these rocks before. And, we arch the back. There's more space between the lower back and the floor. You can maybe slide a hand through. And if you exhale and pull your belly button in towards the spine, maybe there's less space. Depending on your anatomy, even when you move, there might still be some room to move your hand into. I don't, but it could be different in your case. Point is, we want a certain length through the lower back for you. It might look different from mine. I'm going to keep my right hand onto the lower back and I use my left hand to press into the right thigh. I'm just going to hang out here for a few breaths. Every time I inhale, I move the breath up so I feel nice and tall. And as I exhale, the belly button moves towards the spine. And I feel this connection between the floor and the lower back solidifying a little bit. I'm aware of the core that's getting active. So because I'm going crisscross, there's some obliques happening, transverse abdominis. Again, I'm not arching to just hang out here. There's a sense of pressing of the lower back into the ground. Good. And then after 5 breaths or so, I'm gonna switch. Now, I know you can't see my hand, but my left hand is kind of in the space between the lower back and the belly. Also making sure that my belly is not doming. Doming means that it's just my six-pack muscles kind of popping out. You really want to feel like a sense of a corset. The whole of the belly is caressing your whole spine. And then I can use the right hand, pressing into the left knee. And you don't have to press like crazy, maybe 30-40%. Good. And every time I inhale, I create a nice long spine, proud chest. And as I exhale, belly button softens in towards the spine. Feels strong connection between the thigh and my arm. And through that, my core starts to get active. And when I inhale, I might feel a little bit of space or creating more space between the lower back and the floor. And as I exhale, belly button softens through the back. And I feel a deepening of the connection between floor and the lower back. Good. And then you can release. I'm going to keep both hands onto the lower back. And I'm going to come onto the right heel. Inhale. And as I exhale, I'm going to slide the heel forward without losing any of this contact between the floor and the lower back. Inhale, ground. And then exhale the other side. Funny sounds here. And you can do this a few times on your own. And you might notice other types of core muscles waking up, especially the last bit of opening the front of the thighs with the pelvis in this position might feel a little bit odd. Again, for you, if you are more curvy than I am, you might have some space between the lower back and the floor, even when you have a bit of a posterior pelvic tilt. Again, posterior pelvic tilt, you have a feeling that the pubic bone moves towards the belly button towards the sternum. You can also have the hands in the front, feel like a sense that you're keeping this distance between rib cage and the hip bones. Exhale to lengthen. Might feel different parts of your legs also getting extra, maybe your butt and your hamstrings. And all the while, again, not collapsing, not coming off the ground. Heart nice and broad. Good. And then I think we've woken up the deeper layers of the core enough. Let's come on to our bellies from there. So now that we're on our bellies, let's start by releasing the head onto the ground and pressing the feet into the mat. You're gonna set up the same way, so the tailbone starts to lengthen back. And we want to keep the same feeling. If you remember, the hand onto the lower back, between the floor and the lower back, the spaciousness and the grounding. We want to keep that as we come into a tiny cobra. The hands are just decoration. Inhale, rise. And exhale, back down. The hands again are just decoration. You can even use your inhale to, almost like an accordion or almost like a pump. The breath comes up and therefore your body lifts up. Again, I'm not letting the lower back go. I'm still pressing into the feet, almost like you're trying to drag the toes into the ground. Pubic bone presses down. And I'm using the breath like a pump to come up. So you're creating more stiffness through the body because you inhale. And that lifts you up. Last one. Great. And then let's come into a tabletop position. And we'll move into a puppy pose, but we'll keep it quite active. Let's send the hands forward. And you can have your forehead down. If you have a block, you can have your forehead on a block. We're not trying to like overarch and hang out here. You might be quite bendy, in which case your work is going to be to more in containing. And if you're on a stiffer side, we want more space to the heart, but we're going to be quite specific. So you can release the forehead onto the floor or onto a block.
And we want to ground the hands, a bit of external rotation. And if you remember what it felt like, again, to broaden your lower back onto the floor, inhale, you can let the belly hang a little bit. And as you exhale, belly button towards the spine, lots of space. Good, but we're gonna keep the lower back there, almost like a tiny bit of a crunch as you start to melt through the heart and the shoulders. Maybe you lower any amount. Maybe it's just like a hand of your heart melting. Let's inhale again here. Exhale, belly button to spine. Inhale without changing anything, melt the heart. Exhale, belly button to spine. Reaffirm the space of the lower back. Inhale to melt the heart. Last two. Exhale, belly button to spine. Reaffirm the spaciousness for the lower back. Inhale, melt the heart. Last one. Good, and then you can press into the ground and then sit however you would like to sit for a moment. You can be cross-legged. I'm now sitting just on my heels. And let me actually turn sideways so you can see a little bit better. Good. So if you've noticed, what we're trying to do is use the spine in increments. So it's not just the whole spine arches, not just the whole spine rounds. It's the lower spine rounds, but the upper back lifts. So we're trying to create more space and opposition within the spine for the breath to move more freely. A lot of us succeed in doing that when we're not moving the arms, but then when we move the arms, all of a sudden we can get into this pattern again that everything moves. So we want to create more lift through the heart and a softening through the lower back, even when we reach the arms up. Good. So if you like, you can have one hand onto the lower back as you inhale, reach one arm up. And exhale back down. Maybe one more time. Inhale, one arm up. Keeping the feeling of the lower back spreading onto the ground. And exhale, lower down. Let's do the other side. Other hand now onto the lower back. One arm reaches up. And exhale down. And you might notice your arm doesn't go up to 180 degrees. That's fine. If your arm stops here, and if you feel like if I lift beyond that, the movement comes from the spine, that's fine. And exhale down. You might also notice one arm moves a little bit more freely than the other. And out. Let's see if we can reach both arms up without changing the posture too much. Inhale. And exhale. So really noticing how much stability the breath or the inhale gives you. Creates a sense of stiffness. Last one, inhale, the heart reaches up. And exhale down. Good. Let's come into a forward fold. I'm tucking the toes under and coming into a forward fold. Let me turn around. Oh, actually, let me get what is this? My stool here. So I can come up into a halfway lift position. Nice. If you're there and you want to just fold and let the lower back and the legs kind of just get used to a forward fold, go ahead. Your forward fold does not have to look like mine. You can bend your knees. I'm just letting the body kind of soften here, moving side to side. Created a bit of space to the lower back, so this might feel quite comfortable, even though we didn't work on the legs so much. All right, and then I'm gonna go halfway lift. Nice. And I want you to find a height where you can comfortably lift halfway. So that's kind of the point where your spine can get long. Your halfway lift can be up here, can be down here. It doesn't really matter. We want a nice long spine from the tailbone into the crown of the head. And if you need to soften the knees to do so, that's fine as well. Good. A lot of us, when we get here, and if you're kind of on the bendy side, your halfway lift might kind of look like a cat and cow position, but we don't want that. We want, again, inhale, exhale, belly button to spine, and then the inhale, just the heart lifts.
So the same thing we did in puppy pose, we're going to do here in the same position. Not much different. If I bend my knees and the hands move further forward, you notice pretty much in a puppy pose. Let me even come down onto my forearms in my case, so I have to work a little bit harder. So I'm going to inhale here, lengthen the spine. Exhale, I'm going to pull the belly button in towards the spine, creating a bit of roundness to the lower back. Inhale, without losing the sense of belly button to spine, I'm going to lift just the upper back. So I'm fighting against my own spine. And exhale, reaffirming belly button to spine, broadness through the heart. Inhale, you can even pull forward a little bit. So I'm even like in a bit of a sphinx pose position. We're trying to lift the upper back, shoulder blades gliding down. And as I exhale, belly button to the spine. Neck can be neutral. One more, inhale. My movement is I'm pulling the arms back to lift through the heart. Doesn't really matter if I'm here, I'm pulling back way. And if I'm here, I'm pulling the fingertips back. It's an engagement through the serratus a little bit. And exhale, belly button to spine. Good. And then although this doesn't look like much of anything, I feel a lot of work through my upper back. I'm gliding my shoulder blades down while my lower back is opposing the movement. So if I let everything go, I'm gonna overarch. And if I kind of let the lower body overtake, I'm gonna round. So there is not a fight, but a beautiful opposition happening through the lower spine and the upper back. Good. And then you can let everything go. And then let's move into Amalasana for a moment, a squat. If a squat is uncomfortable, you can always sit up on something, no problem. And the same thing here. I'm not overarching everything. I'm not hanging out. The tailbone is grounding, belly button is moving towards the spine, but my heart is lifted. Just a couple more breaths here. Maybe you can also, just pushing up the elbows into the thighs, it really helps you lift the spine. Good, and then let's roll all the way up. You can fold, feet can come hip width again, and then vertebrae by vertebrae to come up. Good. We're just gonna do one last thing to integrate everything. And quite often, me included, when I stand with my legs straight, my lower back can be a little bit crunched, and this kind of position that we're trying to get out of can occur a little bit more easily. If I bend my knees a little bit more, like in a Tai Chi or Qigong type of space, it's easier for me to feel the tailbone moving down, and therefore like a rebirth coming from the floor into the heart. So we're gonna start with the knees bent, and we're gonna move the arms like we did before. Inhale, arms moving up. And as I exhale, re-grounding. Good. A few of these, I have my knees still bent. You can also look from the side. And if it was helpful to have one hand onto the lower back as you reach the arms up, to see if you can keep a sense of breath there. Good. This also helps to shift the pelvis back. In a lot of these postures, the pelvis is forward. If you bend the knees, it tends to come back into neutral. Inhale. As you reach the arms up, it's easier to breathe into the upper lungs. And exhale. Last one. Good. And see if you can keep all of this starting to move towards straightening the legs. Probably there's a lot of space that needs to happen through the front of the hips. Might feel a little bit awkward at first. It's not a problem. And you can gently roll your shoulders back to create a bit more space to the heart. And just notice how it feels like to breathe here. Now that we created some space to the heart, introduce this oppositional movement between the lower back, grounded, and the upper back lifted. So I hope you've experienced a little bit more space around the heart and a little bit more of a softening through your belly space without trying to pull your belly in. this is a movement pattern or also breathing pattern that's developed probably over many, many years, maybe even decades. So don't expect it to suddenly fix itself within 20, 30 minutes. But it's a good thing to revisit over and over and change the way you breathe over time. Thank you.